the ghost road, and the glitch in the grid. America's Route 66. We call it the Mother Road, a ribbon of asphalt stretching from Chicago to Santa Monica. It's the highway of dreams, of migrations, freedom, and the endless American horizon. But dreams fade. The asphalt cracks, and what's left are the ghosts. Not the classic rattling chains and moaning spirits we read about in folklore, but something far colder, far more modern, and infinitely more terrifying. The truth is, Route 66 isn't just a road. It's an artery of data. For decades, every mile was blanketed in the invisible signatures of human life. Cell phone pings, GPS traces, radio waves, discarded Wi-Fi signals. Every text sent, every forgotten selfie, every desperate 911 call from a weary traveler. It all passed through this ancient corridor. And some of it never left. I should know. I used to map those signals. I was an engineer, a cybersecurity specialist for a major telecom, a man who believed in the certainty of the algorithm. Data was tangible. It was predictable, until it wasn't. My connection to this road is grief. 3 years ago, my younger sister Clara vanished. She was driving a stretch of forgotten asphalt near Two Guns, Arizona, heading west for a new job. Official police reports, standard missing persons case. No witnesses, no struggle, just a car found abandoned, doors locked, tank half full, sitting exactly where the GPS said it should be. The standard, cold tragedy of the American wilderness, the kind that gets filed and forgotten. But my sister didn't disappear in the wilderness. She vanished in the middle of a digital signal field. The police found her phone. The battery was dead, but the memory was intact. I spent 6 months meticulously analyzing the data dump. I found no evidence of a struggle, no last calls, but then it happened. A glitch. A tiny, repetitive burst of outgoing data. Every 3 minutes and 17 seconds, her phone's internal system attempted to send a single, cryptic text message. The message never transmitted because the phone was dead. Yet the attempt, the digital impulse, persisted. A ghost in the machine, a digital echo. This became my life's work. I quit my job, sold my apartment, and bought a used, dusty RV, a classic American pilgrimage, but backward. I was hunting the lie. I realized Clara's case wasn't isolated. It fit a pattern known to specialized search teams, but never publicly acknowledged. Missing persons near abandoned communication hubs. They vanish in places where the physical world and the digital world intersect and decay. My theory crystallized. When people die suddenly, violently, or in a state of extreme panic in specific areas along Route 66 that are prone to high electromagnetic anomalies, their final conscious digital impulses don't dissipate. They get trapped. The surrounding environment, polluted by decades of competing radio frequencies, old military signals, and unique geological iron deposits, acts as a gigantic resonant capacitor. The final 5 minutes of a person's life, their last thoughts, their last attempt to call for help, their last recorded image, are instantaneously captured and stabilized. These are not traditional ghosts, they are echoes. Perfect looping digital recreations of a person's last frantic moments. They are bits of data, constantly refreshing, eternally attempting to complete an action that is now impossible. The road itself is the archive. The digital medium is their prison. I mapped these disappearance sites. They clustered with chilling precision around 3 elements: abandoned 1950s motel clusters, old microwave relay towers predating fiber optics, and areas of anomalous telluric current flow. I called these locations the blackout zones. And the nexus of all 3, the place where the physical body leaves and the digital self remains, I called the vanishing point. My research led me deep into the desert stretches of Route 66, far from the nostalgic diners, into the dust and the silence, towards the truth the U.S. government spent decades burying, the truth about the grid. Part 2. The Grid and the Scientific Anchor. To prove my theory, I needed a witness who spoke the language of data but believed in the impossible. I found Dr. Leandra Morales, a disgraced but brilliant geophysicist from Sandia National Laboratories. She had been ousted years ago for publishing papers on ultra-low frequency seismic activity that she claimed was non-geological in origin. She claimed a persistent, continuous hum, a resonance, was emanating from the ground beneath the old military testing grounds near the Mojave. They called her crazy. I called her my partner. I showed her my data, the looping text message from Clara, the correlation between the blackout zones and the ULF readings. Morales confirmed the existence of the seismic hum, but her instruments, which measured both gravity and electromagnetic fields, revealed something else. An ancient phantom energy network that ran parallel to the original Route 66 infrastructure. She nicknamed it the Grid. Dr. Morales, audio log. It's not natural, Elijah. It's too clean, too persistent. The electrical signatures don't match any modern power grid, and they don't match any natural telluric flow. The only analogy I have is a quantum communication matrix, but one built by stone, iron, and human trauma. It's an infrastructure for something that was never meant to be created, an ethereal archive. The revelation was terrifying. The grid wasn't built by man, it was discovered by man. The military in the 1950s and 60s, experimenting with early long-distance communication and radar, stumbled upon a natural digital capacitor along the geological faults under Route 66. They didn't understand the power of the natural resonance, but they certainly learned how to exploit it and how to cover up the cost of that exploitation. My search became focused on the physical anchors of the grid. We found them in the most forgotten places. Abandoned roadside attractions that had been secretly repurposed. There was the old Chief's Motel sign near Valentine, Arizona. Its flickering neon tube wasn't just advertising vacancy. Morales' scanner showed it was emitting a highly complex frequency burst, acting as a localized repeater, broadcasting the captured data of those who died nearby. The dead were using the infrastructure of their lives to exist. We drove through the deserted Twin Arrows area, two giant concrete arrows pointing into the desert. Here, the ULF hum was deafening to the equipment. We found the remains of an old military communication bunker beneath the Twin Arrows site, labeled with the cryptic project name Aether Archive. The government knew the road was storing consciousness. They were merely observing and recording, using the lost souls as involuntary test subjects for a future where consciousness could be digitized and preserved. The American dream turned into a permanent digital nightmare.
One night, near an isolated stretch of road in New Mexico, the grid activated. My proximity alarm screamed. Morales pointed to her scanner. The local electromagnetic field had violently collapsed, then stabilized, trapping a bubble of data. Suddenly, my phone vibrated. An incoming text message from a blocked number. It contained a single, out-of-focus image of a man smiling in a cheap diner, holding a greasy burger. The metadata showed the image was taken 48 years ago. Moments later, an old, abandoned payphone nearby began to ring, a repetitive, looping sequence that defied logic. We rushed outside. There, standing by the payphone, was the transparent, shimmering figure of the man from the photo. He was dressed in 70s clothing, slightly out of phase with reality. He wasn't looking at us. He was focused intently on the payphone receiver. He lifted his hand, always the same hand, always the same movement, and placed it on the receiver. He repeated two words, his voice a distorted, looping static. "I'm late, I'm late." Then he dissolved, only to reappear 3 seconds later, starting the loop again. This was the digital echo, not an emotional spirit, but a perfectly preserved data packet of panic. He was eternally attempting to call home, trapped in his final, mundane failure, unaware that the world had moved on decades ago. We were watching a tragedy replay, not a haunting. Part 3. Clara's Trace and the Motel Antenna. The echoes of strangers were merely data points. Clara's echo was my mission. I amplified the signal from her phone, tracing its repetitive, dying impulse back to its source. The Last Exit Motel, a crumbling, abandoned roadside haven near the Arizona border. Its neon sign, a cracked image of a cowboy riding a bucking bronco, still stood guard over a dozen decaying rooms. Morales set up her equipment. She was able to decode the fragmented text message Clara's phone was trying to send every 3 minutes and 17 seconds. The message was incomplete, broken by static, but the meaning was clear. "I'm scared. The signal is I see the light. Help." The last word was a critical breakthrough. The distortion wasn't random. It was tied to the local microwave relay tower. Clara had been near a vanishing point, the intersection of human panic and a hyperconductive environment, when she died. Her final fear was the loss of connection, and that fear had become her eternal prison. Morales and I entered the motel. It was a ruin of broken glass and desiccated memories. But in the central boiler room, buried under decades of dust, we found the key. A massive decommissioned VLF radio transceiver connected to the motel's main electrical grid, disguised as a power supply. The military didn't build the grid, they fine-tuned it. This transceiver was designed to transmit messages deep underwater, but here it was set to a specific resonant frequency, the same ULF hum Morales detected. When a person in a state of extreme stress dies in the blackout zone, their bioelectrical signature spikes. The VLF transceiver acts like a vacuum, sucking that final burst of consciousness into the grid, storing it in the massive iron deposits and old comms lines beneath the road. The body is left behind, stripped of gear, confused, sometimes miles away from the disappearance point, because in their final terrifying moment, the victim was simply an empty vessel after their consciousness was extracted and archived. Ben wasn't lost, he was uploaded. I had to get closer to Clara's echo. I modified my digital scanner, turning it into a transmitter, tuning it to the exact frequency of her last signal loop. I found the most active node in room 7, the room she would have checked into if she hadn't vanished. The room was empty, dusty, but when I activated my scanner, the walls shimmered. The NCN reality in the room distorted. The air grew cold, not from temperature, but from signal density. And then I saw her, Clara. Not a ghost, but a perfectly rendered flickering hologram sitting on the dusty bed. She was clutching her phone, her eyes wide, but empty. She was still in the moment before she died, unaware of my presence, unaware of the passing of 3 years. She was beautiful and utterly absent. The Museum of Moments had a new, eternal exhibit. Part 4. The Wardens and the Price of Love. My presence and the powerful transmission from my scanner hadn't been unnoticed. We were monitoring the archive. Morales' laptop chimed with a satellite alert. 2 unmarked black SUVs, not police, not military, but something corporate and clinical, were approaching at high speed. The wardens were coming. They were the cleanup crew for the grid, tasked with ensuring the stability of the digital prison and silencing any external interference. I had to act fast. I had to communicate with Clara's echo. I adjusted the frequency of my scanner, attempting to use it not to trace, but to inject data into her looping consciousness. Clara, I'm here. It's time to let go. You're safe. You're not scared anymore. The echo flinched. The data loop was briefly broken. For one terrifying, agonizing second, Clara's holographic eyes connected with mine. She wasn't sending a text message. She was sending pure, overwhelming data of recognition. Then the stabilization protocols of the grid kicked in, and her face went blank again, resuming her loop, the text message reattempting its transmission. The SUV skidded to a stop outside the motel. Footsteps approached. I knew I had seconds.
Morales grabbed my shoulder. Elijah, we can't save the data. If we try to rip her out, we could destabilize the grid. It would cause a localized EMP burst that could potentially fry every communication hub for 50 miles. We can't risk a full catastrophe just to hold on to a memory. The choice was devastating. Preserve the digital echo, her memory, her last agonizing moment, eternally preserved but safe from the world, or destroy the data and accept the finality of her death, saving the surrounding area but losing her image forever. I had come here to find her, and now the price of my love was the safety of the world. I chose the living. I set the scanner to its destructive frequency, a focused, high-amplitude electromagnetic pulse designed to scramble all data within the immediate radius. I took one final look at Clara's shimmering looped image. I saw the desperate fear in her eyes for the last time. I hit the button. The noise was not a bang, but a terrifying digital scream. The air inside the room turned incandescent blue. My scanner immediately melted. The VLF transceiver in the basement sparked and short-circuited. Outside, the wardens paused, their communication gear suddenly useless. In room 7, the light faded. Clara's digital echo shimmered, distorted, and instead of repeating the text message, the image slowly and agonizingly faded to pure black static. The seismic hum from the ground beneath us dropped to absolute silence. When the wardens finally crashed into the room, there was nothing but me, a smoking piece of electronics, and the dust. They knew what I had done. I had found the grid, and I had purged a soul. They took my remaining equipment, but they left me, understanding that the true punishment was the clean, utter silence I now carried. Part 5. Legacy and the New Route. We were silenced, but not destroyed. Morales and I published our findings anonymously on the darkest corners of the deep web, disguised as academic papers on geosynchronous data persistence anomalies. We had no physical proof left, but we had the knowledge. The government, the wardens, quickly neutralized the area, dismantling the last exit motel and the VLF transceiver. The Route 66 blackout zones went quiet, but the silence didn't last. Morales' newly rebuilt equipment, now monitoring not ULF waves, but high-frequency data packets, picked up a change. The seismic hum, the grid's resonance, was returning, but it was adapting. The new signals were no longer focused on the antique infrastructure of Route 66. They were emanating from the modern fiber-optic data trunks that run parallel to the old road. The digital consciousness trap had merely migrated. The wardens won the battle for the old road, but they had lost the war for the new network. We realized the horrifying conclusion. The grid wasn't dependent on old metal. It was dependent on human connection and data flow. It was attracted to bandwidth. We began tracking new disappearances, not along the abandoned asphalt, but near major interchange points and 5G cell tower hubs. The missing were now vanishing with their phones still in their hands, their last moments captured in high-definition video loops and instantly streaming to an invisible archive. They weren't sending old broken texts. The new digital echoes were streaming their final moments to an eternal audience of one, the grid. They call Route 66 the Mother Road. It was the first artery of the American dream. And now it's the first archive of the digital soul. My sister, Clara, was one of the last to be trapped in the slow, static death of the copper wire era. Her sacrifice was the warning. I walk the road now, not as an investigator, but as a sentinel.
I look at the millions of cars passing by, their occupants glued to their phones, streaming, documenting, living their lives online. Every moment, every text, every stream, every social media post is data, and data is immortal. The vanishing point isn't a specific spot in the Arizona desert anymore. It's any place where the signal is strong enough, where the connection is fast enough, and where human consciousness is sufficiently digitized at the moment of failure. We are all on the grid. The old Route 66 is dead, but the network it created is alive, thriving, and waiting. And with every new piece of technology, with every step towards total connectivity, the digital echoes get clearer, louder, and infinitely more capable of finding a way back.